Hey everyone, welcome back to the Healthcare GTM Show by Ampliz, where we speak with healthcare sales leaders, SaaS professionals, and GTM practitioners about what is actually shaping sales, marketing, and revenue operations in healthcare today. I'm really glad to have our guest today, Mr. Jim Mayers. Jim brings over a decade of experience across healthcare SaaS, RCM, EHR, and revenue growth, working closely with ambulatory practices and billing organizations throughout his career. He spent over 11 years at RxNT and is now at PracticeSuite, helping healthcare organizations improve organizational efficiency through AI-driven solutions. Jim, we are really glad to have you with us today. And before we dive in, would love to start with your journey a little. What's your current journey in healthcare SaaS and revenue growth been like, and what are you most focused on in the healthcare market right now?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. So, journey, I kind of started actually as a certified coder billing. That really was my entry into things. I think the biggest thing that helped me with was being on both sides of things. So I was a medical biller. I billed for many practices myself as a third party, also working in office amongst billing teams as well as billing companies. Um, so it really helped me understand that side of things. Years ago, as you pointed to or alluded to, Smith, I was recruited by RxNT. At that point, I was working with a development team, both hybrid, kind of on and off site, to build a billing solution that really could compete. Um, and so we did that, and it blew up. It went great. Um, and then I tailored into essentially managing the billing team, okay, on the SaaS side, um, training and support. Um, After a while, I ended up in the sales realm, and that's where I kind of really understood at that point that it was kind of that or nothing. It's really what I've been looking for my whole life and didn't even know it, honestly. So that's where I am today. I did that with RxNT for quite a while, and then I moved over to PracticeSuite, like you said, um, to sell software. But again, I think the biggest thing is really just understanding both sides of things. If you only spend time on the vendor side of things, you don't really understand the provider side of things, and vice versa.
Actually, it was very insightful to hear about your journey until now, both sales and the vendor side of it. And moving on to, I'd like to understand like you have been selling healthcare SaaS for over a decade. And anyone who has done it knows healthcare is very different from traditional B2B SaaS. What do most sales and marketing teams still fundamentally get wrong when they're trying to generate leads and build pipeline in healthcare?
Do sales and marketing teams get wrong? Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think. Yeah, honestly, the bottom line is most want to sell features, okay, instead of operational solutions to current pain points, right? No healthcare professional wakes up excited about software, right? They wake up thinking denied claims, staff shortages, provider burnout. Their process, be it and a lot of times not very integrated or seamless workflow. Um, those are the things they're thinking of. So as we're trying to point out features, they're thinking change and they're getting afraid, right? Instead of selling to a solution to their current pain points.
Interesting when you said about a lot of features and more as such. So what that brings me like to understand that healthcare teams are still using generic SaaS playbook and the result usually show it. So despite all of that, some approaches clearly work better than others. Now coming to our next question. From your experience, what is the one sales or marketing approach that has consistently helped you break through in healthcare? The thing that gets a real response from the right person.
Very simple, very simple. Most sales reps that you speak to today, they pitch. Let's change the word pitch to diagnose. It's very simple, very straightforward. That's what works. It's pretty black and white. Um, we want to change pitch to diagnose the issues, diagnose their problems, and provide them solutions. You want to speak specifically enough to make the buyer think this person truly understands our world, right? And not too much, right? Speak to them, point out their pain points for them, and then again provide those solutions. If we change the word pitch to diagnose, I think we go a lot further.
Okay, so is there any particular moment in your career where you realize this, that this is something that we should focus on? Any a particular moment as well?
I mean, plenty. I mean, we talk to people all the time. I mean, yeah. I mean, so if you sit on any particular demo, right? A lot of times, a rep may seem scripted almost because they say the same thing over and over and over. And if you think of a car salesman, when you walk in to look at that car, you want to buy a Lamborghini for $10, right? If you could. So the first thing that car salesman is going to do is point out that this one has electric windows, this one has a sunroof, and you're pointing all that out. But again, the buyer is afraid. And in that market, it's still a little different because most people go to the car lot planning on walking out of there with a car, right? When you talk to someone in the medical professional field, they're talking to 20 different people, right? And they may not even plan on buying for another 2-3 months, may not at all, right? So once you find yourself talking and saying the same things over and over and over and showing all the bells and whistles, but it's not working, you'll find yourself in that space where you're really just selling features and not selling solutions to their pain points. I mean, and honestly, you'll probably see that on a daily basis.
Got it. Pretty insightful that you said that we have to focus more on the diagnostic part and more on solutions, that rather than just monotonously stating up the same features again and again. So
Correct.
pretty
And if you really
insightful.
think about it, Smith, honestly,
Mhm.
there are solutions out here that offer features that others
Mhm.
don't. Okay.
Mhm.
But the ones who don't, they're working on it. Right. A lot of our solutions are kind of comparable. Right. What separates you from this solution is not going to be a feature or two. It really isn't. It's going to come down to what you're solving for them. If I spoke to a medical professional today and said, I'm going to streamline your workflows, they're thinking, oh my gosh, the word change goes in their head and you're losing them, right? You want to use words that don't make them think the current process will get worse. If that makes sense.
Insightful that was. So moving to our next question. So you have run outreach into hundreds of practices and billing organizations over the years. So how much of the lead generation problem in healthcare comes down to the quality of contact data sales and marketing teams are actually working with?
A ton, right? A ton. So first and foremost, healthcare data decays faster than any industry, right? I mean, it comes down to a lot of things: provider split, closed doors. Not only that, but the person who's reaching out that you were able to gain contact information from, who are they? What is their role? Are they a decision maker? They may leave the company, right? So a lot of it. I'd say the toughest part too is, you'll see a vendor that says, okay, we fit practices between 10 and 200 providers. So that's just showing you that they're looking at that aspect as if everyone's the same, and they're really not. A 20-doctor cardiology practice is nothing like a 20-doctor pediatric practice, right? So what we really need to do is understand who we need to speak to, what is their makeup, right? Because a lot of vendors nowadays are using sequences for outreach, templates, things that are automated through CRMs. But if, like I said, if that 20 provider cardiologist is getting the same exact content, data, and outreach that the 20 provider pediatric office is going to, we're not going to be very successful, right? I mean, you may land a couple, but even a broken clock's right twice a day, right? So how do we tailor to those things? But all that starts with the correct data. So it's a lot. I mean, a lot of it's going to come down to not having the appropriate data. But beyond that, once we have that appropriate data, we need to tailor things. If we're not tailored, we're going to lose. And again, it all starts with the data. Yeah.
And honestly, when what you said about data decay is something that the challenge that Ampliz is also trying to solve. We are helping healthcare sales, marketing teams work from verified, accurate data instead of outdated information. Hearing this from someone like you, like who is actively working in this field, makes the problem much more real than any vendor pitch ever could. So moving on to my next question. Yes, please.
No, I said awesome. Sorry.
Yeah. So moving on to my next question. So can you share a quick real world example where outdated information like the wrong contact or reaching the wrong decision maker directly impacted a sales opportunity or campaign?
Yeah. We had a rep with us that was working with an account, and the rep moved on. Actually, not to another company, but to another division. Um, and so I started going through all their previous leads. I was reaching out to a young lady that was the direct point of contact. It seemed like they had a great rapport. It was probably about 9 or so, conversations back and forth, and then it just kind of dropped off. So I was reaching out, and then I decided maybe a few weeks into a month, I decided to market closed, lost. It's just can't get a hold of. The biggest problem was we didn't have the practice information. We didn't have the provider information. We had the direct contact of this individual. But that's another big point. When you're on these initial calls, and you're on these discoveries, it's called a discovery for a reason. We need to learn as much as we can, document this data, and so we can move on. Because I didn't have that data, I had no clue who to reach out to. Long story short, a month or two later, that the provider of that practice actually called in, and I was lucky enough to be the one to snatch the phone. And he said, you may have been talking to so and so. And when I pulled it up, it was her, and I saw that. Man, I remember closing it a while back, and he said, yeah, she's no longer with us. Had I had his contact information, I would have closed this 2 months ago, right? Come to find out, he really just had an issue with a 24-month term. And so I said I could get it to a 12-month term today, and he signed that day. So it all came down to the appropriate data. We were lucky enough, honestly, to still close that 2 months later. But had I had his information initially, I would have been reaching out and not knowing that I was just reaching out to someone who hasn't been with the practice since before I even started calling them.
Biggest lesson from that situation would be, if you have to summarize it?
Gather as much data as you can. Again, first and foremost,
Mhm.
healthcare data is decaying faster than any industry. So
Mhm.
if you're speaking to someone who is an office manager of this practice,
Mhm.
a month from now, that office manager's phone could change. God forbid, their health could change. The status of the practice could change. There's so many things that could happen, right? Find out who they are. What's the name of the practice? Where are they located? You pull that up, you may be able to find the provider. How long have they been in business? How well is their website established? That's huge to know this kind of stuff. The more data we gather, the better foot we have to stand on. And again, the more intentful our outreach can be, and not so broad and just hoping that we just grab a fly with our tongue.
Indeed, Jim, that really captures the reality of the current healthcare sales today. And as you said, it is not always about the poor outreach or weak messaging. Sometimes teams are simply working with map with no longer that reflects their market. So since it was a small interview, so we have come to the last question of this entire session. So you are someone who is actively operating in the field every day and not just speaking theoretically about healthcare sales. So what is this conversation been like for you, and why do you think more healthcare sales and marketing professionals should be openly sharing their practical insights and experiences like this?
Oh, that may be the best question yet. It's a really good question. So, to me, it comes down to one thing. We're going to brand this today, you and me, Smith. We're going to call it the AE effect. RE effect. Let's call it that RE effect. Remove ego, right? The bottom line is there are different divisions, and we all have to work together. Sales and marketing, yes, you're correct. They are huge, but also sales and operations. Sales is kind of in the middle of that, right? So what happens though is ego gets involved a bit, and a lot of that comes from leadership, right? And so you have C-suite coming down. What happened here, guys? Why didn't this happen? And it's almost immediate for you to save your team. It's just folks sometimes trying to jump into, well, it's because sales didn't do this, or marketing sent us the wrong info, or whatever, or operations just saying, well, sales sold something we can't do, right? And so it ends up being a competition of throwing one another under the bus. And ultimately, we all fail. Bottom line is we absolutely have to collectively work together. I have been lucky in my life that have probably, I mean, one of the best leaders I've ever worked under, honestly, who's been really, really open to feedback. We have to understand our role as well, Smita, right? So I knew, and this guy, he's my COO. Give him a little shout out, Brad. That's the best leader I've ever been under. But really open to feedback. You have to be open to pushback. So if he brought an idea, I may push and say, yeah, but I'm telling you, I'm in these trenches every day, right? So if this happens, the first thing that's going to happen is X. And then he may say, well, it's a good point, or yeah, but this. Ultimately, the decision is his. So as long as I understand my role as well, whatever he ends up deciding, I'm hitting the ground running with it like it was my idea, right? We have to collectively work together and not work to throw each other under the bus. And I promise you, the biggest factor of that is ego. There are a lot of people amongst different teams that need to gel together. There isn't room for one ego in there. Not yours, not mine. We have to collectively figure this thing out. Push on me, I'll push on you. Wow, that's a good point. That's why it's called debate for a reason, right? And figure it out together.
Completely agree with you, Jim, that collective work is the best work. That's what I also believe in. And feedbacks are something that to be obviously constructively taken in and always accepted, specifically if it is coming from your seniors who have more experience in the field, per se. And so, yeah, so so this is what we exactly made this entire conversation about, and in this entire show about the Healthcare GTM show. The idea is to not, it shouldn't be another vendor podcast, but real practitioner conversation that we had today from people actually doing the work inside Healthcare GTM every day. Jim, this was genuinely insightful, and thank you again for joining us for today.
Absolutely.
And giving us your time.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yes.
It was great.
It was very indeed very insightful. And for everyone watching, if you find this conversation valuable, feel free to share it with somebody in healthcare, sales, marketing, RevOps who could benefit from it. I would see you in the next episode.